Welcome to this episode and thank you for staying tuned. So here, since I assumed you have no idea of what CSS is or what HTML is, I think it is important that I introduce to you what CSS is. It is important that I show you a little bit of CSS, what it is, what is used for, how do we bring it into our website, and how do we make our website beautiful. So basically CSS stands for cascading style sheet. So CSS. So the C stands for cascading. I think it's better I write that out. So cascading style sheet. So CSS actually is a language, a computer language, just like the HTML, but it is the only language used to style HTML, because by nature HTML does not come with any particular styling rules. So CSS was invented in order to have an impact, to have actions on HTML elements, HTML tags. So what it means is you write your HTML, then you write some other thing, some other language, another gibberish language like we did with HTML, then which has an impact on HTML, the HTML elements. So basically, once the browser sees the CSS code, it will kind of find whatever HTML element that is affected, and then as I apply the styling or whatever we ask it to do on that HTML element. So this is what I'm trying to illustrate. So you have your HTML. So let's say this is the browser. This is the browser. Right? And then you have your HTML. So let me make it look HTML-ish, right? So you have your HTML like that, and then whenever the HTML is loaded in the browser will just display things, right, by default and so on. But when you use CSS, you have your HTML, right? So we do the same thing, so you understand the idea. You have your HTML which goes into the browser, so which goes into the browser. So while the browser is rendering the HTML, there will be some CSS. So the browser encounter some CSS styles, and then the CSS code will be telling the browser, okay, you see this particular tag, put it left, the other one put it to right, the other one make it cover the whole page, and the other one make it look big or cover some big space, or put some colors here and there, right? So put some color here and there and do something. So basically that's what it does. So in conclusion, the browser ends up displaying a very beautiful page for you. So that's all. That's basically what HTML and CSS do. So the browser is in charge of this whole thing. Now, how do we actually what does it actually look like? What does CSS looks like? So it's simple. The CSS language works in this way. One, you write something like a tag, or you write a target. So what are you targeting in the HTML code? What are you targeting in the HTML code? What element, what tag are you targeting? So once you write that target name or the tag name, then you open the curly brace like this, and then you close the curly brace somewhere like this. So in between, you now say what you want to happen to that particular target element or targeted element. So let's say in our case we would like to say, okay, change the color of the element. So you write color, say color, and then you write colon, and then the name of the color you would like to apply to that element. So to illustrate this structure, let's assume in our case we had a heading tag. So let's say the h1 tag. So that's our target. So we write h1, then we open the curly brace, then we close it, and then we write the color, then we write the colon, and then in front of the colon we write now the color we want to apply to that heading one. So let's say green, even though we are writing in blue, sorry. So green, and that's it. So basically that's it. Yes, so without ignoring that you can add some semicolon, especially if you are having many things you write. But if it is just one line, the semicolon is not mandatory. So like in this case, you can just ignore the semicolon, but you can have a good practice of always writing the semicolon. So basically that's how CSS works. So this, you can already guess that there are so many things we have to learn, which are these properties. So this is a properties. So this is a property, and this is the value of the property, and this is the value. So in basically CSS, learning CSS is all about learning all these properties, or learning as many properties as possible, and their values, various values, because some of the properties have many values. So knowing most of these properties and their various values, and knowing how to use them and when to use them. So basically that's what CSS is all about. That's what it's all about. Now we are going to see how we can join it. How do we make CSS work with HTML together? How do we put them together? So and to add, before we close this, to add here, the target does not always have to be a tag name. So the target does not always have to be a tag name. It can be, remember, we defined a particular attribute to our input field. When we created the input, we had an attribute called ID. We had an attribute called ID, and we gave it the value of name. And remember, I was saying that that attribute is supposed to be unique. So that value is supposed to be unique. So if it is unique, it means we could also target it in our CSS, right? So the target can be an ID. The target can be an ID, and in that case, all you have to do is to write the ID with, you start with the hash sign to show that this is an ID. Then you write the ID name like this. So this is name in our case. Then you open your curly brace, you write your properties and their values here. And then this star, whatever you write here, now will be applied to this particular input, right? So we are also going to see another property attribute of the HTML tags, which is a bit similar to the ID attribute, which is called the class attributes. So in that case, you can write the input like this, and then give it an attribute of class, the attribute of class, and then the name of the class. So let's say field. The particular difference between class an ID is that a class can be assigned to many elements at the same time. So it means we will have another input here which has the class of field, and then with the ID we can only have one element with one ID. So it happens sometimes that you might like to apply the same thing to many elements at the same time. So if you want to start our input, so let's say we have this input here. Let's assume the first one is just the name, and then the second one, which is a type of email, so a type of email, then we can also give it a class of field. So it means both the text input and then the email input will be styled the same way. So whenever we target this class element with our CSS, we are going to apply this same style to all these elements. So in that case, assuming we want to create our CSS, we want to target that class with our CSS. So let me pass like this. So to target this class, all you have to do in that case is just write a dot to represent the class, then the class name, in our case field, right, field, then the curly brace, and then we close it. And now in between we can write our CSS properties and their values, CSS property and value, and so on. And that's it. So these are the three main ways of targeting HTML elements using CSS and then applying some style to them. So this is your basic introduction to your CSS. In the next video, let's start styling our homepage, and we'll see how we bring together the HTML and CSS, and from there we can now elaborate more on how this whole thing works. So see you in the next video. Thank you, and kindly consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Thank you so much. Bye.